resources available to help a province that had requested assistance during a crisis. And they were in command of what happened on the ground, not the federal government, Madam Speaker. I would like to point out to the honourable member that he will have 3 minutes remaining following statements by members and question period. We'll now start with statements by members.
By members, the honourable member for Spadina Fort York.
Madam Speaker, it's an honour to rise in this chamber again and to talk about housing and cities. This week, our government took the historic step in choosing to work with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and directly fund cities as we work together to end homelessness in Canada. Our government knows that not everyone can safely practice social distancing because of shelter conditions or overcrowded homes. We know that when people who are already struggling with illnesses are left to sleep rough or pitch a tent in a park, that this precarious situation turns deadly very quickly under COVID-19. This is why $1 billion is there to help cities directly, to fund nonprofits and Indigenous housing providers in rural, urban and northern communities immediately and to help them acquire new housing. This funding, combined with close to $500 million in reaching home funds this year for frontline homeless services, is so critical right now. As someone I talked to living in a tent encampment in my riding told me, homelessness is like COVID. We don't need a treatment, we need the cure. This rapid housing initiative is a bold move to do just that. End chronic homelessness now.
The honourable member for Saskatoon Grasswood.
Madam Speaker, psoriasis is a chronic inflammatory skin condition that affects an estimated 1 to 3% of people in Canada. Psoriasis causes skin cells to grow and shed 10 times faster than normal, resulting in flaking, redness, pain, along with itching and bleeding. People living with psoriasis are at a higher risk of developing other diseases, including arthritis and depression. Psoriasis has no cure, but it is treatable. Treatment decisions are often difficult because of the long road to stability with this unpredictable disease. Access to effective care is critical to supporting psoriasis patients. This World Psoriasis Day, I would like to recognize the work of groups like the Canadian Psoriasis Network and Unmasking Psoriasis in Saskatchewan for providing critical information and support to people affected by psoriasis.
The honourable member for Willowdale.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are rightfully proud of our tremendously rich diversity. For far too long, however, our extraordinary diversity has not always been reflected in our corporate boardrooms and senior management positions. Our institutions and leaders should not only serve as microcosms of society, but also as inspirations to the next generation of incredible Canadians who deserve to see themselves reflected in positions of leadership. Representation matters. That is why I'm devoting my statement to welcoming the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industries' clarion call to Canadian businesses of all sizes to commit to the 50-30 challenge by striving to achieve 50% gender parity and 30% representation of underrepresented groups, including racialized persons, those who identify as LGBTQ2S+, people living with disabilities, as well as First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, we can unleash the full potential of diversity and the promise of inclusion for all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Drummond.
The honourable member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to let the victims of the October crisis do the talking. People like Gilles Paquin. He said they showed up at my place around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. They kicked in the door, 2 guys with machine guns. Mr. Paquin was jailed for 7 years without even being allowed to take a shower. People like Louis Haynes, arrested by the police. He said they rounded up the whole family, Nicolas, 16, Pascal, 19, and myself, 20. I'm not sure that I stayed for 1 week. I was in a place where the light was always on, and you lose the sense of time. Is it yesterday or tomorrow? Is it day or night? People like Gaetan Dusty, who was woken up with a machine gun and then watched for 4 to 5 hours with a machine gun always pointed at him. It's not exactly the high life. Mr. Speaker, 494 other Quebecers have similar stories. The federal government owes them an apology.
Honourable member for Don Valley East.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak about the forgotten people of Yemen. The continuing war in Yemen is deemed by the United Nations as the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. Much of the country's infrastructure has been destroyed. 20 million Yemenis face food insecurity. 10 million are suffering from famine. The suffering of the Yemenis does not make front-page news, but the images of the women, emaciated children and families is a reality, and we should be concerned also about the human rights violation. Canada, as a middle power country, can facilitate the peace effort and should engage neighboring Saudi Arabia to ensure that the peace talks respect international laws and convention. For peace to be sustainable, it is important that the Yemeni women are actively engaged because they bear the brunt of conflict. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's beleaguered oil and gas industry has suffered for 5 years at the hands of this government. From East Coast refineries to West Coast access to oil drilling in the territories, this government's disregard for the industry from coast to coast to coast is astounding. As Canada's territories work tirelessly to recover from the economic effects of this pandemic, vital oil drilling projects have been noticeably absent from the North's recovery. What's worse is the disregard for dialogue, as this government didn't even consult with its territorial counterparts before it banned offshore drilling in the Arctic. I have seen firsthand in my riding of Calgary Centre how this government's policy misdirection has cost my constituents jobs. Canadian workers in the oil and gas sector are rewarded for their dedication to excellence with cancelled projects and open disdain for their valuable work. I wonder when will this government start listening to territorial and provincial leaders and stop punishing Canadian workers and their families based on unsubstantiated policies?
The honourable member for Etobicoke North.
Mr. Speaker, I celebrate Mr. George King and wish him a very happy 100th birthday. George was born in Scotland, served in the Second World War, and chose to make Canada his home. He is a very proud Canadian, Scot, and family man. Here in Canada, George served on boards and is director of the Canadian Real Estate Association because it is community that matters most to George. Just 2 years after arriving in Canada, he co-founded Rexdale Presbyterian Church, a touchstone in our community. 2 decades later, he co-founded the Rexdale Presbyterian Senior Citizens Corporation, which today is home to 200 seniors. George is a man of strong faith, deep conviction, and tremendous wit. I hope to see George for Robbie Burns Day share a poem and song and reminisce about the Highlands. But for now, I thank him for his service to Canada and wish him happy birthday.
The honourable member for Whitby.
Mr. Speaker, I recently met with Will Pecheneg, a local hockey champion who formerly played professionally for the Oshawa Generals and is now coaching kids locally. Will suffered the loss of his father, Dan, in 2013, and like so many who have lost a parent, Will's grieving never stopped and didn't get resolved immediately. In fact, 1 in 14 children in Canada will experience the death of a loved one by the age of 18. Knowing this, Will has created a program called A Heart Like Mine, helping kids who have lost a parent. In honor of his father, this young man has converted his grief into passion and taken initiative to make sure that others in our community have the support that they need. Will continues to use his profile as a professional hockey player to help build a children's grief center in the Durham region, which will serve over 3,000 children in need. The facility would offer children a place to share experiences and heal. I invite everyone in the Durham region to support his efforts. And Mr. Speaker, I hope the honorable members of this House will join me in recognizing Will's dedication and leadership in the pursuit of his dream, helping grieving families in Durham region. Will, I'm sure your father would be proud.
The honourable member for Calgary Signal Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There were 2 major announcements this past week regarding our energy sector. First was the merger between Synovus and HoC, which unfortunately is going to result in some more job losses in my home city of Calgary. But the announcement that received less attention was Suncor's repatriation of 700 jobs from Mississauga and Oakville to Calgary. Now, this should be a wake-up call for these Liberal members across the way, Mr. Speaker, who represent those ridings. These jobs are leaving Toronto and coming to Calgary, but it proves how the energy sector has had a stronger impact on the entire Canadian economy than this government will give it credit for. And the government policies around the green agenda, banning plastics, is not only a direct attack on Western Canada, but jobs across this country. And it's time for these Liberal MPs, Mr. Speaker, to stand up to their leader and say no to his desire to phase out the oil sands and ruin the economy of Western Canada.
The Honourable Member for Orleans. Mr. Speaker, on October 16th, together with my MPP colleague Stephen Blais, I had the honour of visiting the very impressive Orleans Health Hub, where construction is moving along nicely. Thank you to the team from the Montfort Hospital, Bernard Leduc, Mélanie Potvin, and Carl Napper, as well as Andrew and Ziad from Ellis Dawn General Contractors for hosting us. The Orleans Health Hub is a unique and innovative project that will provide integrated health services to our community. Mr. Speaker, the fundraising campaign is in full swing, and I'd like to thank Yves Tremblay and his wife Sylvie Villeneuve, who recently made a historic donation of $1 million to the Montfort Foundation. I join with the entire community of Orleans and Ottawa in thanking them from the bottom of our hearts for their historic $1 million donation, for this philanthropic gesture, and for their commitment to this project. Thank you.
For Sturgeon River Parkland.
The Jessica Martel Memorial Foundation operates Jesse's House, a home for those fleeing domestic violence in my constituency. Jesse's House opened this past May after years of fundraising, and it couldn't have come at a more needed time. With the pandemic raging, domestic violence has increased, making spaces like Jesse's House crucial for survival. Unfortunately, due to economic conditions, charitable support has decreased dramatically. Provincial government support and some federal support has been forthcoming, but they need to access the wage subsidy to cover part of their estimated $60,000 monthly payroll. Jesse's House was denied the wage subsidy because they had not been open long enough. This is absurd. We need shelters like these now more than ever. They are only running at half capacity and are turning away those fleeing domestic violence for lack of support. It's time for this government to immediately revisit the wage subsidy legislation to ensure that crucial shelters and other desperately needed services get the financial support they deserve. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Speaker, our nation and our hometown of Hamilton lost a statesman and icon this week with the passing of Senator David Braley. A successful entrepreneur from humble beginnings to kind-hearted philanthropist with an avid passion for sports and arts, David Braley was the first Hamiltonian to serve in the Canadian Senate. He was an extraordinarily selfless person. When the Hamilton Tiger Cats were on the verge of bankruptcy in 1989, David Braley stepped in to save the team. The senator also chaired the committee that brought the extremely successful World Cycling Championship to Hamilton, was a director of the successful 2015 Pan American Games bid, and has donated millions to amateur sport. Never missing a single opportunity to help his fellow Hamiltonians, he's led fundraising campaigns and donated millions to the Royal Botanical Gardens, local hospitals, art galleries, and other educational institutes, including his alma mater, McMaster University, where an athletic center, a health sciences center, and a center for antibiotic discovery all bear his name. Speaker, when asked why the senator was so generous, he responded, and I quote, "I think Hamilton is a very special place. I'm making sure Hamilton has the best." David Braley was one of the most truly honorable people I've had the privilege to know. David, you are and will be sorely missed by all, my friend.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, for over 20 years, St. Thomas More High School has conducted a Halloween for Hunger campaign in support of the Neighbor to Neighbor Center in my riding of Hamilton Mountain. Instead of trick-or-treating, students can collect non-perishable food donations for the food bank run by Neighbor to Neighbor. Sadly, due to COVID-19 restrictions and out of concern for the health and safety of their students, the event has to be canceled. 42% of our current households using the food bank are new to the center, putting added pressure on the food bank as we head into the holiday season. Undeterred, the high school is reaching out to the community, asking for financial support for Neighbor to Neighbor. I recognize it's been a difficult time due to the pandemic, but I'm asking those who can to help Neighbor to Neighbor Food Bank by making a financial contribution this year. Details are available on the Neighbor to Neighbor website, and I would like to recognize and thank the students of St. Thomas More for their past and continued efforts to help Neighbor to Neighbor and the residents of Hamilton Mountain. And I would also like to add that it's my daughter's birthday. Happy birthday, Megan. She's my youngest daughter at 29 years of age.
The Honourable Member for Avignon-La-Métis, Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, it's not us in the Bloc Québécois who are asking for an official apology for the abuses of the October crisis. I'm going to let the victims of the abusive arrests and detention without charge and intimidation do the talking today. People like Serge Mongeau, who said, the worst part was not knowing what was going to happen. Did my wife even know what had happened, where it had been taken, how long it had been, or how long it was going to be? For him, it was 8 days. People like Jocelyne Robert, 7 months pregnant. She says, to calm me down, he pulls out a piece of paper of his briefcase and shows me my name on it. He tells me it's a list of people we can't allow to escape. We're even authorized to shoot at you. Some women tell me they've been there for 3 days, a week, 10 days. I can only imagine I'll be giving birth behind bars. Mr. Speaker, 495 other Quebecers have similar stories to tell. The federal government owes them an apology.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, it's a privilege to pay tribute to a lion and a legend. The Right Honourable Don Mazinkowski served Canadians with dignity and integrity for more than 2 decades as the MP for Vegreville. As Deputy Prime Minister, he was called the Minister of Everything, where apparently the Prime Minister's instructions to everyone else was, run it by Maz. He said he was inspired by Diefenbaker's visit to Vegreville and his message that the West must play a meaningful role in national business. Maz was a powerful voice for Alberta, for the West, and for our role in Confederation. He never forgot where he came from while he was in Ottawa, a staunch advocate for his riding where he is much loved. He was said to have no enemies after over 20 years in politics, which really is a remarkable feat on its own. I can't say the same for myself after only 5. After political life, Maz kept giving in other ways to countless charities and causes. Selflessly, he even declined a Senate seat. A former MLA in Lakeland said Maz did politics the right way, tenacious but gracious, argumentative but not mean-spirited, hard-nosed but soft-hearted. To Lorraine, Roger, Sherry Ray, Morgan, Mackenzie, and all the Mazinkowski family, thank you for sharing him with Canada. We are all better for it.
Yeah. The Honourable Member for Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in the House on the anniversary of the 97th Republic Day of Turkey. On October 29, 1923, Turkey was formally declared a republic. It was also the day that the Republic of Turkey elected its first president, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. 21 years later, Canada and Turkey established diplomatic relations. And now in 2020, the Canadian-Turkish community has grown to over 65,000 citizens. Canadians of Turkish origin are a vibrant community whose language, culture, and traditions have enriched the social fabric of Canadian society. Organizations such as the Federation of Canadian Turkish Associations, among others, work hard to put on important events for the community, including International Children's Day. I want to acknowledge and thank them for their tremendous contributions to Canada. Canada is stronger because of our diversity, and the Turkish community has made us a stronger and better country. I want to conclude by wishing a happy Republic Day to all those celebrating in Canada and abroad.
À l'ordre. Suite aux discussions.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of the victims of today's attack in Nice, France. I now invite honorable members to rise.
À l'ordre. Order. Oral questions. Question orale. Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister contradicted his own government on the shutdown of the pandemic warning system. In an interview last weekend, the Health Minister admitted the pandemic warning system had been shut down and the decision was being examined. Yesterday, the Prime Minister suggested his government made no change to the system. Both these things cannot be true, Mr. Speaker. Why is the government spreading misinformation about their shutting down of Canada's pandemic early warning system?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me be really clear about one thing. Canada today is facing a grave second wave of the coronavirus. Now is the time for all of us to come together and fight this second wave, which is ravaging Europe and our neighbour to the south. Now is the time for us to focus on what we can do going forward to save Canadian lives and to preserve the Canadian economy. There will be a time for postmortems, Mr. Speaker, but while the plane is flying, you don't try to change the engine.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, if you made some errors while the plane was taking off, you should learn them before the plane has to land, Mr. Speaker. There has been another disagreement between the shutting down of the pandemic warning system. In the same interview, the Health Minister said the review into closing the system hadn't started yet. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said the review was complete. So will the Deputy Prime Minister let this House know? Is it over? Has it started yet? And who will they appoint to review the decision to shut down Canada's pandemic warning system?
Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, what I'm focused on, what the government is focused on, and what I believe all members of this House need to be focused on today is the crisis before us. We need to work together to fight the second wave, which is here right now. I do agree with the member opposite that there are lessons we can all learn from this global pandemic. And for me, one of those lessons is, as a country, going forward, we need to invest more in our public health systems. We need to invest more to be sure that when the next pandemic comes, Canada is even more prepared. And I know all members of this House will support us in doing so.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Prime Minister is correct. We have to work together. We have to learn the lessons. So we'd like to learn who made the wrong decisions in her government, because a news report this morning reveals that the Deputy Prime Minister disagreed with the Health Minister's handling of the early pandemic. Particularly, she was in favour of closing the border immediately, and the Health Minister wanted to keep the border open, Mr. Speaker. So my question to the Deputy Prime Minister is simple. Why did the Prime Minister overrule her decision and favour the Health Minister's decision to keep our borders open, letting in thousands of more cases of COVID-19?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when the global pandemic hit Canada, we introduced tougher restrictions on the Canada-US border than have existed in Canadian history. And what I'm especially proud of, Mr. Speaker, is that we have managed to have those restrictions in place without harming the vital trade between our two countries. That is a real accomplishment for the Canada-US relationship. It is an accomplishment by all Canadians, and I want especially to thank Canadians living along the border who have really enthusiastically understood the value of these restrictions and support them.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
La France, encore une fois, est
France has been attacked once again. Our values of openness and freedom of expression are the target of Islamist attacks. After the horrible murder of Professor Padi, the Prime Minister took 10 days to mention the attack. That's a long time. Does this Prime Minister hesitate in standing up for our values and our allies? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This question is really very important. I think all Canadians are absolutely horrified by the Nice attack. I think I speak for all members in this House today when I say that we stand with the French people and the people of Nice. France is one of Canada's most important and dear allies, and we will always show solidarity with France. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. When France is attacked, all democracies are being attacked. Here in Canada, the Prime Minister has promised to create de-radicalization centers. That is yet another broken promise, Mr. Speaker. Protecting Canadians against terrorist attacks should be a Prime Minister's priority. Why is he refusing to show leadership on this point? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we never refuse to show leadership when it comes to protecting the lives of Canadians. And for that reason, for our government, protecting Canadians here in Canada and abroad is a priority. But I would like to say something else because it's very important. That is that Canada, both today and in the future, stands in solidarity with France and the French people. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Montarville. Mr. Speaker, the wolves have been released. The day of shame has arrived. That's what René Lévesque said when the Canadian Army was deployed to arrest 497 people and intimidate thousands of others in October 1970. Innocent Quebecers who saw the authorities burst in the middle of the night bearing weapons. They were arrested without grounds and detained without explanation for days. 50 years later, these victims deserve an official apology. Prime Minister, we are watching. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, my father's not the one who said, just watch me. But this is an important question. We must recall that the period around October 1970 was difficult for all Quebecers. It is important to start by thinking of the family of Pierre Laporte. For this family, this anniversary brings back tragic memories. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, in hindsight, the use of the War Measures Act was announced by stakeholders in all parties. The Liberal Minister of Justice, John Turner, opposed the use of this act, and Jean Marchand, Pierre Elliott Trudeau's Quebec lieutenant, said that it was like using a cannonball to kill a fly. The Conservative leader at the time, Robert Stanfield, said that the use of the War Measures Act was cruel and based on unproven assertions. Why does this government refuse to recognize that this was an abuse of power and deserves an apology? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the period surrounding October 1970 was indeed difficult for all Quebecers. We must reflect on the path that we have followed since then. We can be proud of living in a country where we can choose to express our ideas peacefully without violence. And we can be proud of living in a country where the government leaves space for democratic debate, like today here in this House. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, more than 10,000 people have died because of COVID-19. 80% of those deaths were in long-term care centers. Canadian troops had to be sent in to protect our seniors. And the problem is continuing. The Prime Minister has promised to work with provinces and territories to establish national care standards. Where are those standards? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. This is a time when our country is in the middle of the second wave of the pandemic. We need to think about our seniors. It is true that our women and men in uniform were there in the spring and summer to protect our seniors. And now, today, we must continue to work together with the provinces and territories to protect our seniors in long-term care during this difficult second wave.
For Burnaby South.
We have to take in these numbers. 10,000 Canadians have died because of COVID-19. 80% of them have been in long-term care homes. But what's even more staggering is how clear the evidence is that the worst conditions were found in for-profit long-term care homes. Now, the evidence makes it clear. So my question to the Prime Minister is this. Knowing that the worst conditions were in for-profit homes, does he still believe the federal government should be in the business of for-profit long-term care homes?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite is right that there have been particular concerns about how our elders have fared in for-profit long-term care facilities. We cannot turn a blind eye to this, and I very much agree that all options need to be on the table when we think about how we run, operate, and regulate our long-term care facilities in the future. The life of our elders must be a priority. Our country as a whole has not done well enough, and we need to do better going forward.
Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, this government isn't transparent or consistent about applying their pandemic rules. Another day and yet another revelation that a wealthy U.S. executive was granted a quarantine exemption when he entered Canada on October 19th to push the Teamster union workers to accept a new contract. The first time this kind of thing happened, the minister said it was a mistake, but he hasn't fixed it. Quarantine restrictions are enforced on everyday working Canadians, their small businesses, their family members. So a very simple question. Why is there still one set of rules for wealthy, well-connected elites and a different set for everyone else?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me thank the member for an important question. Mr. Speaker, there's no two set of rules. Canadians have the right to enter Canada at any time when they follow proper health and safety protocols. To our question, our top priority is the health and safety of Canadians during this pandemic. Decisions on exemptions by officials are only issued after the approval of the Public Health Agency of Canada and the relevant province or territory. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to protect the health and safety of all Canadians.
Honourable Member for Lakeland.
But, Mr. Speaker, everyday Canadians are concerned and confused about the obvious double standard. They don't know what to expect. People, for example, who go to the border for a visa or other issue, they stay in their car, remain in the neutral zone, don't even cross into the U.S., but when they turn around, they're told they have to put their lives on hold and quarantine for 2 weeks. But if you're a U.S. billionaire and want to come to Canada and travel around freely, no problem, Liberals say. Doors open, come on in and take our jobs while you're at it. When will this government show the same compassion and fairness to everyday working Canadians as they do to U.S. billionaires?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Let me set the record very, very clear. There's not two set of rules. Canadians have a right to enter Canada at any time when they follow proper health and safety protocol. To the question of the member, as I said, the health and safety of Canadians is the top priority of all members of this House during the pandemic. It is also essential, and I'm sure the member would agree, to keep our economy moving during this pandemic and protect our critical and essential business. Exemptions have been granted after extensive consultation by Global Affairs Canada's officials with the Public Health Agency of Canada and the province and territories. Mr. Speaker, Canadians understand that we need to keep...
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
With our unemployment the highest in the G7, the 1.8 million Canadians without jobs are wondering what the economic plan is. Well, yesterday we learned that the Finance Minister's plan is debt-fueled government spending. The Bank of Canada's governor's plan is debt-fueled consumer spending. It's the credit card strategy. How to pay it all back? Well, we'll cross that bridge when it collapses. Mr. Speaker, when will this government realize Canadians want paychecks, not bigger credit card bills?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me start where the member opposite started, which is something that is so important to this government: jobs for Canadians. And let me just point out to everyone in this House that the job recovery in Canada has been stronger than in the United States. TD pointed this out in a report they issued on October 20th. This is what they said: no matter how you slice the data, the Canadian labour market has been on a steadier road to recovery relative to the U.S. This is true both for full-time and part-time employment, despite similar depths of initial decline. Mr. Speaker, we're working hard for Canadians and Canadian jobs.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Well, she quotes bankers because bankers are thrilled with all the printed money that's being pumped into their profit margins. But she forgets to mention that we still have the highest unemployment in the G7, higher than the United States, in fact. And what do we have in response? So far, no budget in a record 18 months. We have no number to associate with the deficit, no spending levels to report, no date for the fall economic update. And the last time we had those biweekly reports on COVID spending, well, that was back before Bill Morneau became Bill No More. Mr. Speaker, when are we going to get some facts about the recovery?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what is really important is for Canadians to understand that our work to support Canadian jobs is working. Canada has recovered, particularly on employment, which is such an important measure for us all, much more strongly than the economy with which we are mostly connected, the United States, more strongly than economists predicted. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? That is because Canadians want to work hard, they are working hard, and it's because we've put the economic measures in place to allow that jobs rebound to happen.
L'honorable député de Mégantic-l'Érable.
The honourable member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, we learned this week that Francophone public servants are being left to their own devices. Today, the Commissioner for Official Languages has raised the alarm. And it's not the first time that he's raised this problem, but nothing has been done. Once again, we've heard a lot of nice words from the government, but no action. Why is this government ignoring the alarm that's been raised by the Commissioner and Francophone public servants? The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Commissioner for his report and important work. During a pandemic, Canadians need to have access to information in the official language of their choice to protect their health and safety. The Commissioner, during the crisis, raised some issues and stated that we had responded promptly at that time, but I agree with him and with my colleague that we must always do better, and we will. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, this is particularly problematic during a pandemic. It's not me saying that. The Commissioner of Official Languages said that and stated that the government must correct the situation and offer information in both official languages simultaneously. It's a matter of Canadians' safety. The leader of an Acadian organization states that with the current situation, Canadians are being placed at risk. When will the President of the Treasury Board fix this situation in all departments? The Honourable Minister. The President of the Treasury Board and I agree, of course. We must always do more to protect Canadians' health and safety, as well as official languages. And to respect the Official Languages Act, we are continuing to work on this every day. Now we know that we are in the middle of a crisis and that we were facing an extraordinary situation, and that we constantly had to adjust. With that in mind, I would like to thank the Commissioner for his excellent work. We will follow his recommendations. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, the federal government had no grounds to justify its use of the War Measures Act in 1970. In fact, it had to invent a scenario worthy of James Bond to justify this. They claimed that an insurrection was being prepared in Quebec, that a provisional government was ready to overturn the rule of law, that 3,000 terrorists with machine guns, rifles, and dynamite were just waiting for the signal to overthrow the government. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government lied in order to invoke the War Measures Act and did so against the advice of the RCMP. 50 years later, will it recognize that this was a serious mistake, and will the government apologize? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we have the privilege of living in a society that has chosen to respect dialogue, openness, where differences are settled through the political process and not by violence. That is who we are as a country, Mr. Speaker. That's our history. But when we speak of our history, it's important to discuss what that really means. It's important to talk about the entire context and not just cherry-pick the facts. The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, the federal government didn't arrest terrorists during the October crisis. Instead, it arrested our national poet, Gaston Miron. It tried to silence the great Pauline Julien. Ottawa arrested poet Gérald Godin. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Heritage is also the member for the Plateau Montréal area, which is the riding of Godin and the home of Miron and Julien. Does he recognize that the federal government tried to intimidate Quebec by placing its culture in a cage behind bars? And will the government finally apologize for the abuse of power during the October crisis? The Honourable Minister. On Saturday, the 10th of October, 1970, at 6 o'clock, Pierre Laporte was playing ball outside of his home with his nephew. That was the last time that his family saw him alive. Why doesn't the Bloc's motion mention that? Why does it ignore the kidnapping and assassination of this man who was an MNA, a minister, but most importantly, a father, a son, a husband? Why? The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, the October crisis' 497 arrests were not only immoral and violent, but also illegal. That's what the IRAI organization shows in a study that was published this morning. The War Measures Act decree was written in English only. It was also illegal because it caused violations to at least a dozen articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In 1970, what happened weren't actually arrests, they were kidnappings. Why does the government refuse to apologize for these terrible actions? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I love Quebec deeply, as I know all of the members of the Bloc Québécois do. But when you truly love Quebec, you should not seek to divide it, Mr. Speaker. You should seek to bring it together, and that is what we must do. It is up to each and every member in this House, as well as all the members of the Bloc Québécois, to seek to do the same. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, Yesterday I asked the Prime Minister 2 questions and he didn't seem to be able to answer. So today I will ask the Minister. The first vaccine development contract was signed with the Cantino Biologics, a Chinese company. But when that fell through, because one can't trust the Chinese communist regime, well, now what we want to know is how many millions of dollars were lost in that failed attempt at a deal. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. I'd like to clarify. This company did not receive any funding from the Government of Canada, and we are continuing to follow all possible promising leads for a vaccine against COVID-19. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, what an answer. That is an answer. You should tell that to the Prime Minister because he didn't seem to be able to give us an answer like that. And I'd like to hear that kind of answer when it comes to the We Charity scandal and all the other scandals. But things didn't work out with Cantino. And now we're late when it comes to vaccines. So I'd like to know when Canada will finally have a vaccine against COVID-19. The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I'm pleased to be able to answer this question. It's very important to have a vaccine strategy, and that is why we will continue to work with all relevant businesses to find solutions for Canadians. And that is a priority, a key priority for our government. The honourable member. Thank you. Perhaps the minister will be able to update his sheet for next time. Now, let's talk about rapid testing. Another complicated file for the Liberals. The first time I asked the question, the minister was very proud to say that there were 200,000 tests for Quebec. Then she changed her mind and said that it was 30,000. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said it was 200,000. Can we make sure that the government actually knows what it's talking about? How many rapid tests are ready for Quebec, and when will we be getting them? The Honourable Minister.
And in fact, the honourable member is actually correct. I made an error. In fact, 453,000 tests have been shipped this week to Quebec, and we look forward to supporting the province of Quebec with future shipments as they arrive.
The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speakers, families are sharing appalling stories of the treatment of their loved ones at Parkview Place. Yesterday, CBC reported that this federally owned for-profit care home did not even separate COVID-positive residents from other residents. Their beds simply pushed apart. This is unacceptable. We know reducing crowding saves lives. The tragedy at Parkview and other long-term care homes has happened under the watch of this Liberal government. Will this government immediately end for-profit care, implement national standards before families lose more precious lives?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I share the deep dismay of the member opposite about the conditions that many people have to live in long-term care homes. Let me be clear, all long-term care operators must be held accountable to providing care that protects the lives and dignity of the people for whom they're paid to take care of. We must do better, as the Deputy Prime Minister and Prime Minister have said. Every step of the way, we've been there for provinces and territories, Mr. Speaker, including $730 million in the Safe Restart program to ensure better infectious prevention control measures. And we'll continue to be there, Mr. Speaker, as we develop standards for every Canadian across the country.
Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Canadians across this country are deeply concerned about their parents and grandparents in long-term care. Shamefully, seniors living in for-profit homes are 4 times more likely to become infected and die from COVID-19 than in nonprofit homes. That's unacceptable, and it shows what happens when profits are the priority instead of quality care for seniors. Every dollar must go to the well-being of patients. Will this government commit to getting profits out of long-term care to ensure seniors are safe in these centres?
Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I share the member opposite's deep concern about the outbreaks of COVID-19 in the long-term care facilities. This is a national tragedy. We've worked closely with our provincial counterparts to ensure that provinces and territories have guidance for facilities on how they can protect their residents from COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, I believe that all long-term care operators must be held accountable to keep their obligations to protect the people whom they are paid to serve. And under the Safe Restart Agreement, Mr. Speaker, we provided $740 million to support, control, and prevent infections, including those in long-term care. And Mr. Speaker, we're going to work with provinces and territories to set new...
The honourable member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, as the only Francophone university west of Alberta, St. John campus is a source of pride for French-speaking Albertans and for all Canadians who believe in supporting official language minority communities in Canada. I know this because I was proud to go to French immersion in West Vancouver. However, the proposed cuts to education by Jason Kenney's Conservative government are threatening this vital institution, the St. John campus. Can the Minister for Official Languages tell the House how this government will continue to support St. John campus and the Franco-Albertan? The Honourable Minister for Official Languages. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government recognizes how important this is for Franco-Albertans and all Albertans, in fact, to have access to post-secondary education in French. We have always supported St. John campus, which is threatened today by the Alberta Conservative government through budget cuts. We know that these kinds of institutions are key to the vitality of our minority language communities. The Liberal can the Conservative leader opposite join us and condemn the cuts that are currently taking place in Alberta and speak to his friend Jason Kenney to condemn them?
Honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, many thousands of unemployed Canadians, after claiming EI benefits, negotiated severance packages with former employers, individually or through lawyers. But now they're stuck with no income at all. And that's because Service Canada isn't issuing notices of debt, which leaves severance packages frozen in trust accounts, while EI has been cut off pending back payment of portions of those packages. Mr. Speaker, does the minister realize what's happening?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we worked really hard to make sure that severance earnings did not impact a worker's entitlement to EI under the new, more generous EI system that we temporarily have in place. I can promise this House to look into the exact issue the member is raising between myself and my colleague to make sure we address it. Thank you.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, even before COVID, notices of debt were often delayed for many months. Now they're not going out at all. Mr. Speaker, this doesn't involve deep mathematical computation. The employer knows the severance package amount. The government knows how much EI has been paid. Simple subtraction should release the balance. Why won't the Liberals act to ensure that more Canadians aren't pushed into poverty?
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, as I said, we actually lifted the requirement that severance be considered as part of forward-looking income as we changed the EI system to welcome more Canadian workers into the system. I can happily report that 1.8 million Canadians are in the new, more relaxed and generous EI system, with another 2.5 million Canadians on the new recovery benefits. We have 4 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker, who are very happy today because they are getting support from the federal government.
The honourable member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Mr. Speaker, Ontario's Long-Term Care COVID-19 Commission released an early report last week. This report has urgent recommendations to help protect Canada's seniors in care and to mitigate the risk of outbreaks. It emphasizes the critical need for prioritized access to rapid testing in these facilities. The number of COVID-19 cases, Mr. Speaker, are on the rise again, and there is no time to wait. Why do our most vulnerable people, our seniors, still have no access to rapid testing?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, the member opposite is incorrect. Since October 21st, nearly 1.2 million rapid tests have been sent to provinces and territories. In Ontario, 530,000 alone. I could go through the list, Mr. Speaker. Rapid tests have been deployed and are in the process of being shipped to provinces and territories on a rolling basis. And provinces and territories will be able to use those with the populations they deem the most urgent.
Member for Edmonton Riverbend.
Jacob Guziak is a 1-year-old in my riding who suffers from severe combined immune deficiency, and he's been given 6 months to a year to live. His family has been working tirelessly to get him access to gene therapy treatments and are currently unavailable here in Canada. Now, over a month ago, and on behalf of the family, I wrote the Minister of Health about Jacob, and we still have yet to receive a response. Time is precious. Will the minister commit to reviewing Jacob's case so his family and hopefully others can get the help they deserve?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I would be pleased to speak with the member opposite about Jacob's case and understand it so that we can ensure that Jacob has the supports he needs.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I heard Liberal colleagues say today that they cannot give an apologize for the War Measures Act because they have to focus on the pandemic. And yet it is their stubbornness alone that means that we're forced to debate this issue that occurred in the past. To say I wish to offer an official apology on behalf of the Government of Canada for invoking the War Measure Act and using the Army against citizens of Quebec would take 8 seconds, just 8 seconds. This government prorogued the House for 6 weeks, but they can't take a mere 8 seconds to apologize to the 497 people arrested illegally at gunpoint. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, They're talking about the past in all of its aspects without talking about the elements that they are refusing to face or accept. The Bloc's motion is proposing a false version of all of the events that occurred. We cannot ignore the death of Pierre Laporte and the death of other victims and the pain and suffering of their families. It's not a simple blindly changing history that we can just do this. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, the federal government rightly apologized for the unfounded mass internment of Japanese Canadians during World War II. The Italian community was promised an official apology for similar reasons during the same war by the Prime Minister himself. The only people subject to unfounded mass arrests for whom the Prime Minister has no time to apologize are the 497 victims of the War Measures Act. Why an apology that's justified for some, but not for these innocent Quebecers who were unjustly imprisoned? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, yes, there were these arrests. There were also bombs and deaths, injured, kidnappings, assassination of Pierre Laporte. All of that occurred, Mr. Speaker. But when we want to talk about history in a responsible way, it is our obligation to speak about it with all the facts, not just some. It's an obligation that the Bloc had and failed to do. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, airlines' fate hang in the balance. This government must find a way to save these companies and related jobs. But just as important are the consumers who paid for a holiday and yet weren't able to take it. The government must insist a full refund for Canadian travelers as a precondition to the airline bailout package. When will this government act and ensure that Canadian consumers will get all their money back for services not rendered? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand, of course, passengers want to be refunded and they're frustrated because of the existing situation. We are working on this file and on the major file that's affecting the entire industry because this industry has been hard hit. We are working to find solutions. These solutions will help us to ensure Canadians who depend on the air service sector that this industry will be there after the pandemic is over.
Sarnia Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, after months of COVID restrictions, we know that our internet connectivity is more important than ever. And despite years of Liberal promises, we still have areas that lack broadband internet and adequate cell service. In my own riding in 2016, I was promised $12 million for a specific SWIFT program, which now the Liberals say they're going to deliver in 2026, which is not SWIFT. So when are the Liberals actually going to deliver on their promises to build broadband internet in rural areas?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, like my colleague from Sarnia, I too care about rural economic development and see high-speed internet as a vital recovery tool for every Canadian. Whether in Curve Lake First Nation, Duro-Dummer, Trent Lakes, Havelock, Belmont, Mithun, North Kawartha, Selwyn, or Peterborough, or any corner of this great country, Canadians deserve access to this essential service. Our government's been there for them, including partnerships with SWIFT. There's more to say, Mr. Speaker, and I look forward to working with my colleague to that end.
Honourable Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. For the Liberals, a Team Canada approach means helping their friends in business. Months ago, manufacturers in the prairies and in BC were quick to retool, prove their capacity, and offer ready support. They weren't picked by the Liberals, and now there are piles of PPE going nowhere. But there's totally the opposite treatment for companies like Baylis Medical and Medicom. Why does the government prioritize Liberal connections and Liberal ridings?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker,
Since the beginning of this pandemic, we have taken every effort to procure PPE from domestic and international suppliers, and we have received support from suppliers right across the country who have stepped up to support this great effort. We now have 2 billion items of PPE procured. We have 28.5 million rapid tests procured, and we have 7 agreements for vaccine procurements, Mr. Speaker. Why? Because our government is here for Canadians and will remain so.
The honourable member for Mississauga East Cooksville.
Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 has exposed significant ugly weaknesses in our healthcare system. Of all of Canada's deaths related to COVID-19, a staggering 85% have occurred in long-term care homes. With a second wave, we must do more to protect our most vulnerable. Many seniors from my riding were residents of Camilla Care long-term care home. Tragically, Camilla Care lost over 70 residents to coronavirus. I'd like to hear from the Honourable Minister of Health regarding what is being done to support those living and working in long-term care homes in these difficult times. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his deeply important question. I share his concern about the outbreaks of COVID-19 in long-term care facilities, and my heart goes out to all of the families who have lost a loved one across Canada. Under the Safe Restart Agreement, we provided $740 million for measures to control and prevent infections, including those in long-term care. We supported provinces and territories with their work to boost care in these long-term care homes through the Canadian Armed Forces and, of course, the Red Cross services. If provinces and territories need support, we're there. Mr. Speaker, we continue to provide support to long-term care homes across the country, and we'll continue to do that to support Canadians no matter where they live.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
We recently learned that the U.S. has set its sights on yet another Canadian industry. This time it's blueberries that are the target of American tariffs. The Americans know a weak-kneed Liberal government when they see one. They went after our steel and aluminum. They went after our softwood lumber. And we all know how this Liberal government sold out our dairy industry in the NAFTA renegotiations. So, does a similar fate await our blueberry producers? And what action has the minister taken to defend our blueberry industry?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government will always stand up for Canadian producers, farmers, and agri-food industry. We are very concerned by the U.S. decision to launch a global safeguard investigation of fresh and frozen blueberries could eventually lead to the imposition of tariff on imports from Canada. Minister Ng have raised the issue during a recent call with the U.S. representatives, and we are confident that there will be no problem. Thank you.
I just want to remind all the members, I've heard it on both sides, and I didn't say anything, but just when we refer to someone, we refer to them by their title, not by their name. I just want to remind everyone. I know it's kidding. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Mission Maskey Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, this week we learned the Liberals allocated more than half of the promised $1 billion for rapid housing behind the scenes. How is it fair that some big cities get funded while the remainder of Canada's communities struggling with homelessness are left to compete amongst themselves and apply for the rest? What about Coquitlam? What about Trois-Rivières, Mission, and Guelph? And what about rural Canada in the north, Mr. Speaker, where housing challenges are more acute than anywhere else? Why are these communities and regions less important to this Liberal government?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Rapid Housing Initiative is focusing the first $500 million to the top 15 municipalities that have the highest number of individuals experiencing homelessness. The second $500 million is open to every other community that has ready-made projects that can turn affordable housing solutions in 12 months or less. That is the advice that we got from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. That is the advice that we got from the mayors of the top 15 municipalities that have the highest number of homeless individuals, Mr. Speaker.
Great idea. The Honourable Member for Prince George Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal strategy for Fraser River Chinook salmon has been an utter failure. Instead of implementing an effective recovery strategy for our iconic Pacific salmon, the Liberals chose once again to place unnecessary restrictions on fishing opportunities for British Columbians. The minister has closed the fishery where there are lots of fish and impeded efforts of groups trying to restore salmon stocks in areas with low numbers of fish. They have ignored balanced proposals and the advice of experts, including their very own scientists. When will the minister stop scapegoating British Columbian fishers for her failing to protect our BC salmon?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we know that we need to do a lot to protect the BC salmon. That's one of the reasons that we've put a number of initiatives in place. Mr. Speaker, this is an iconic species that means so much to the province of British Columbia. We continue to make our decisions based on the best science available. We will continue to work with our provincial and territorial partners, as well as with Indigenous groups, to make sure that we are protecting salmon. Mr. Speaker, this is a long-term solutions that we have, and we will make sure that we do everything we can to protect this species.
The Honourable Member for Don Valley North.
Thank you, Speaker. Since the beginning of the pandemic, local business in my riding of Don Valley North have been reaching out to my office to ask about what support are available to help them throughout this difficult times. Shutdowns due to COVID-19 have been extremely difficult for small businesses. That's why I'm proud that from day one, our government has acted quickly to support small businesses through this crisis. Can the Minister of Small Business Export Promotion and International Trade please explain how these changes to the Canada Emergency Business Account will continue to help small businesses in Don Valley North?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the Member of Parliament for his advocacy for small businesses in Don Valley North. And since the very beginning of this pandemic, we have listened to small businesses, and the member has been excellent at sharing feedback from those businesses in his riding so that we can better serve them. And to date, the CEBA has helped more than 770,000 businesses, and I'm pleased to announce that the businesses operating with a personal account now can have access to this important interest-free loan. Mr. Speaker, the Member of Parliament for Don Valley North can tell the businesses in his riding that we are for them every step of the way.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 14 long-term care facilities in Alberta have COVID-19 outbreaks. 90% of COVID-related deaths in the province are seniors. The government needs to do much better to support our seniors. The priority needs to be on care for our loved ones, not on the bottom line. Care standards need to be put in place and they need to be enforced. When, what date will this government put in place national standards to protect our seniors?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and I share the member opposite's deep concern for the outbreak of COVID-19 in long-term care facilities. And of course, my heart goes out to all the families that have lost a loved one in every community across the country. In fact, early on, we understood that long-term care homes were particularly vulnerable to COVID-19 infections, and that's why we provided $740 million for measures to control and prevent infections. We've also provided, as the member knows, help with long-term care through Canadian Armed Forces, and the Red Cross is still on site in a number of care homes across the country. We'll be there for provinces and territories, Mr. Speaker. We'll work with provinces and territories to strengthen standards so no matter where you live, you have a safe accommodation.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver Granville.
As we hear demands for an apology from the Prime Minister for his father's invocation of the War Measures Act of 1970, as we hear the current COVID October crisis spike in terms of cases, I remind this House that the Emergencies Act replaced the War Measures Act in 1988. In light of what is happening in Canada, in the US, and around the world, can the Prime Minister please tell us if he intends to invoke the Emergencies Act as our COVID crisis continues to seriously endanger lives, health, and safety of Canadians? Further, is he confident his actions and his leadership today will not see demands for an apology for not invoking the Emergencies Act 50 years hence?
The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker. I didn't get it going.
Mr. Speaker, when you go back to the events 50 years ago, we have to remind ourselves and keep this in mind that the province of Quebec has requested the intervention of the Army at that moment, Mr. Speaker. And again, if I may, to go back to the Bloc opposition motion today, they just spoke about part of our history, and when we want to be true to ourselves, we should speak about the whole story, not just part of it.
And that's all the time we have for questions today. I believe we have a point of order coming from the Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that if you seek it, you will find unanimous consent for the following. That the House, A, condemn the threats, harassment, and intimidation tactics which are targeting family members of flight PS 752 victims. That we call on the government to investigate the complaints, and that we call for greater action to protect the safety of all family members of flight PS 752 victims.
This being a hybrid sitting of the House, for the sake of clarity, I will only ask those who are opposed to the request to express their disagreement. Accordingly, all those opposed to the honourable members moving the motion will please say nay. Agreed? The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay.